Hey guys, how's it going? Kripp here. Today I want to dedicate a whole video to our new old god, Yogg-Saron. The reason I want to do this is because it is a card that, unlike all the other ones, you can't even truly understand its effect. In most cases, when you see, new revealed card, new expansion, whether it's this one or another expansion, doesn't really matter. You kind of understand what the card actually does, and then you use your capability to understand that card and then fit it into an actual deck. Now, with Yogg-Saron, that is not really the case, because this battle cry to cast a random spell for each spell you've cast this game is, it has so many dimensions, it has so many just aspects to the card that you don't really understand what it does by itself, let alone how you can realistically use it in a deck. And, the community of Hearthstone has recognized this. The community has taken quite a few efforts to make the card, maybe a bit more understanding. They've made like a lot of the tools that I'll show you guys today, and there's been a lot of analysis from a few of the members that I wanted to share with you guys as well. So let's go through it. Let's go through some of the analysis here. This is from Reddit. If you guys want to check the sources, they are all in the description for you guys to fully read and see the comments and all the rest. There's more information that I'm mentioning, but I do want to add on a few very important aspects that I think are not mentioned in the community, development of Yogg-Saron. So this is just a list here of how the ability itself actually works. So it casts random spells. It can target you, your opponent. It can basically target anything. It can target Yogg-Saron. It can kill Yogg-Saron. And the effects are only collectible spells, so things like spare parts, and if you're playing in the standard format with Yogg-Saron, cards that are not in the standard format are not, within that collectible set. So you can only cast those standard spells rather than all of the spells. You can't get like a spell from GVG, for instance, if you're playing him in the standard format. You can kill himself, but Battlecry will finish. Okay, that is a very important little aspect to it. If it has a choose effect, it'll choose randomly, so that has to do mostly with druid cards. If it has a random effect that it can't target, if there's no eligible target, it will fizzle, so it'll basically do nothing, but it will still count the card for being one of the spells that is in line to be cast. It'll follow the rules as if your hero cast them. So cards like Demon Fuse will give your opponent a mana crystal. If it doesn't have a condition to stop it, it'll select any eligible minion or character. So it basically can do anything. Forbidden spells use whatever mana you have left. And that's generally going to be 0 unless you can get like a heavily discounted Yogg-Saron somehow, I guess. Or, if you get Astral Communion, perhaps, maybe that can do something. The spells don't trigger on spell trigger effects, and it mentions Mana Worm, it mentions Mana Addict, because you are not the one casting the spells. Yogg-Saron is casting the spells, and I hinted at this mechanic in my card review that it is a new mechanic in Hearthstone. It is a new mechanic because instead of a hero being able to cast something, it is a different card is casting those abilities himself. And this can be, very broadly expanded upon, and maybe it will be in this set, but I'm sure eventually in another we'll see that happen. So yeah, it mentions that. So cards like Cho and Gallowix will not give your opponent a copy. So it breaks a lot of the synergy, but there is some synergy left. If you go down, it does work with Halaziel, the other released really interesting card of this expansion. We're not too sure about Overload. Blizzard, I think, is still deciding on this. And Yogg-Saron does not add to the spells cast that game because it goes only off of your spells. So if you have multiple Yogg-Sarons, which is possible, or if you bounce him back to your hand to replay him, if he survives his own onslaught, again, that can happen. But he's not going to double up on the number of spells. That's an important aspect to realize. You'll see the order in which the spells are cast. That makes a really big difference, as we'll see here in a moment. Discard cards will actually discard your hand. If you have Brand Bronzebeard in play, Yogg-Saron would perform the battle cry twice, even if they have been killed or transformed. That is a really interesting a little thing there. I mean, I thought that if the first battle cry happens, but then it kills Bran, it wouldn't trigger the second battle cry. But no, that's not true. It triggers both battle cries. So Bran does have a really, I don't know if it's that powerful of a synergy with Yogg-Saron, but a very interesting interaction with Yogg-Saron, and does not cut into turn timers. So there's probably a lot of animation time, especially if there's been a lot of spells previously cast by the card, but it does not eat up part of the turn with or without Nosdormu it mentioned. So that's pretty cool as well. And there were a few tests done. So for combo, if you played Yogg-Saron, combos will not activate, but if you play Yogg-Saron after another card, the combos will activate. That's pretty difficult to do, but if you have like a 0 mana cost spell, like, I don't know, a Moonfire, you can just play that and then Yogg-Saron, your combos are activated, and that can be a good thing if the combo spells target your opponent's stuff, but it can be a bad thing if it targets you. So, maybe not the biggest deal to try to enable combo before playing Yogg-Saron. Discover effects will be picked randomly as well as chosen ones, so there's not too many discover spells, but there is stuff like Raven Idol, so if Yogg-Saron rolls into a Raven Idol and then ends up, just giving you a random card, it is going to be purely random. You will not be doing the discovering. Yogg-Saron will be doing the discovering. He might not be as wise as you might be, or he might be a little bit smarter. And Halazeal, as I mentioned, does work with Yogg-Saron. It's a very cool interaction. You can heal for a lot, but I would guess that Halazeal is a high priority target, so I imagine this interaction would be quite rare, but it would certainly be amazing. Lock and Load does not give you Hunter cards. It does not trigger that way because it is not you playing the spells. Yogg plays the spells. Golden spells will not cause Yogg to play golden spells. Whatever. Yogg-Saron, you get the wild growth effect. The other stuff is kind of trivial. We kind of get it. Now, the really cool part the community has brought to this whole thing is there's been some development on like a Yogg-Saron simulator, and I can show you guys here. And there's been quite a lot of interactions with this. So this is a default setup. It has your opponent's health at 30, your health is 30, and then 2 armor, and then there's a bunch of garbage minions on the board. You can input how many spells you're going to summon with Yogg-Saron, and let's just do 10 because that's the default. This is everything default. So we're going to summon Yogg-Saron. We can see that it shows up on the board, and we can see the cards that have been chosen by Yogg-Saron. So Fist of Jaraxxus, ends up killing a minion. Then we have Starfire, killed another minion. Then we have Battle Rage, so we're going to draw some cards. Then we have Inner Fire, that does basically nothing. We have Lightning Bolt, killed one of my minions. Explorer's Hat just does really nothing. And we had Divine Spirit. We had Call the Wild is a really interesting one. How about that one? And then Mulch kills an opponent, and then Arcane Shot. So that was generally pretty good. And this calculator is to kind of give you guys some understanding of how the interactions will work. Of course, they're going to be truly random, but there's going to be some samples that we can analyze to really understand the effect. Now, we saw that kind of play, and we can see basically how it did here. That was actually, I've done this simulator quite a few times. That was actually a pretty damn good one. There wasn't any board clear effect, and board clear effects are pretty common when playing Yogg-Saron because they actually do make up a decently large portion of the card pool. But generally, all the things that had damage affected the opponent, and generally the positive things worked on your side. You got some really good spells there too. So that was a really good Yogg-Saron, and I don't know if you can really expect that every single time, but I would argue the situation that the simulator had us start in was not too realistic, because if you're playing Yogg-Saron, you really have to tailor your deck to it, and that is not an easy thing to do, as you have to play a lot of spells. There's a lot of simulations and trials based on the number of spells, but that aspect is not very well defined. What does it mean to actually play a lot of spells? What is a lot of spells, and how many can you realistically play before playing Yogg-Saron? And I think the best example I have of this is the Summoning Portal Tavern Brawl, where basically everything you play first starts off as a spell. And I've noticed that through most of my games, I end up playing about 10 to 14 spells in this Tavern Brawl. Those games end pretty quickly, but generally a lot of players in ladder will play pretty aggressive decks, so unless you're playing a very control-based spell deck, that is kind of what you can expect. I don't think you will see more than 10 spells on a regular basis, even if you really try, because, the game does not wait for you to play Yogg-Saron. The game is going to try to pressure you in certain spots where you eventually have to play Yogg-Saron to get lucky, or you have no chance of winning, or you just lose immediately. So because of that, I would say that number 10 for number of spells is probably the fairest estimate for how many you'll realistically get if you are designing your deck around Yogg-Saron. There's a little bit of a difference to this. I kind of thought about decks that I would play that could maybe control the game and stall the game as part of like a Yogg-Saron themed deck. And I think the closest deck I can really come up with that can do this very well is the Freeze Mage. Freeze Mage is particularly good because you can draw a lot of cards. You can stall out the game with board clears, with life gain effects. I think Frost Nova is probably one of the best cards because there are so many board clears that can, on one hand, be included in the deck, but also can be triggered by Yogg-Saron. You can set up a Yogg-Saron turn by just freezing your opponent's board for 3 mana with a Frost Nova. That's really, really clean way to handle the situation. So I took all this into consideration, and I came up with my own version of the simulator. So let's go into it. So this is a simulator that we just completed here, and this is a simulator that I think is more realistic. So we can see that the situation is not quite as we remember it the first time. I think in the general case, if you're playing a Freeze Mage style deck, you have a lot more cards than your opponent. Your opponent probably has a few cards, high life, lots of minions, while you really shouldn't have any. If you're playing Yogg-Saron with a spell-themed deck, you're really not going to play many minions, so there really aren't going to be very minions on your side. This is significant because when Yogg-Saron rolls on like buff effects, it's generally going to work against you. So we're going to go ahead here, summon Yogg-Saron. We got Eye for an Eye, that does nothing. We got Ancestral Healing. Oh, okay, let's do Eye for an Eye. Ancestral Healing targets your opponent. That sucks. Holy Wrath. Damaged yourself for 3. Not what I would pick. Then we have Seal of Champions, works against you. Then we have Cleave, clears some minions. Conceal, Yogg-Saron has Stealth. Consecration, deals with some of the minions. We got Confuse, flips some minions. Flash Heal. Flash Heal ended up going on your opponent's Chillwind Yeti, which is pretty useless. And Thought Steal. That wasn't too bad. Let's just run that again so we can have another sample here. Totemic Might. Yeah, Misdirection. Pyroblast. Let's see what this lands on. It hits the Imp. Thistle Tea gets a bunch of cards. Spending Madness, just it's not going to really do very much in most cases, but it actually cleared most of the board in this one. Blood Warriors does actually nothing. Backstab can only target Yogg-Saron. Swipe can only target minions, so that's pretty good. Lock and Load does nothing. And then we're going to buff Yogg by 2/2. So you can see that even with a lot of spells, even in the positive case, there is a lot of misses. It is a very inconsistent card. Now, it is important to note that almost every time you're going to have a net positive effect, but you're also designing a deck around a card. You're also spending 10 mana to play a card that you design your deck around. You're spending your whole turn, and this is like the optimal case. A lot of decks that mimic this type of play style will win the game when they come to this. So a lot of decks, when they control the game, have stabilized the board in some way or another, and play a 10-cost minion, that is a win condition. And to get to that stage in the game will only happen maybe 60% of the time, because that's just how the game works. So if 60% of the time you get to the position to play Yogg in your favor, then you have maybe 70% chance, 80% chance to do well. And that is the main disconnect that I think people don't really understand. While Yogg-Saron will do well, maybe 70 or 80% of the time when you're playing 10-ish spells, to get to that stage safely is also an uncertainty in any given game of Hearthstone. Now, to further see what's going on here, I mentioned that there were a lot of trials done with the Yogg-Saron simulator, and I want to go over that so you guys can see that, there is some redeeming quality to the card. So we can see here that with 5 spells, in general, it did pretty well. It had some board control cards. About half the time, it had some AoE cards, and, it did a little bit of damage here and there. Not too big of a deal. With 10 spells, we can see that there was an AoE effect 80% of the time, and that was a really big deal. And there's some board control. There's a lot of card draw, even though in my samples I didn't end up drawing too many cards. There are a lot of card draw effects, so Yogg-Saron is a card that you want to play at the later stages of the game, but Yogg-Saron might also draw you a crap load of cards and mill you to death, so there's that little bit of a risk factor. But, I do want to say that is pretty minimal. I don't think it will cause you to die too frequently. At 15 spells, and this is really like the extreme, at 15 spells, you basically made a deck around Yogg-Saron. You played out almost every single spell. You play Yogg-Saron in that spot, and it is like your last hope to basically win the game. So it's going to board clear again roughly 80% of the time. It's going to heal some stuff. It's going to damage some stuff, but less so than you think. You saw a lot of the trials that we did. It really didn't do damage to my opponent in any case. In fact, the only damage that it did to any opponent was myself with like a Holy Wrath or some garbage. So it doesn't really finish the game as you might expect. It did draw a lot of cards though, so it might kill you doing that. At 20 spells, this is really where it gets ridiculous. I think this is kind of very optimistic. You're really only going to get the 20 spells if you have a brand and then you play Yogg-Saron. So if you have a brand, you play Yogg-Saron, you can expect to clear the board 90% of the time, and you can expect to do a little bit more damage, but in that case there's a few more minions on the board, so that kind of counterbalances a little bit. But you're generally going to come up in a situation where you're going to end in a favorable state of the board. There's going to be some board clear, you're going to get Yogg-Saron in there, and it's cool and do all that. So that's kind of where we're at with the trials. So in conclusion, what is going on with our big old god here, Yogg-Saron? Is it a worthless card? No. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try to make these decks work. I think some of these decks will work, but I think the main disconnects that people have is how many spells can you realistically play within a game and actually have a decent deck? And how frequently can you get to the position where you haven't lost, you can play Yogg-Saron, and it doesn't finish you off if you're only at just a few health points. And I think with the consideration of both of these factors, while it might be a strong card, while it might be a really, really cool card, it definitely will be, it is unlikely to break the game. I don't think Yogg-Saron will be the card that people will base their decks on and will play them on tournament level, on legend level too frequently, because I think the inconsistencies really hurt the card. Now, on the other hand, I think Yogg-Saron will absolutely be one of the most amazing cards when it comes to showing off highlights and showing off what you can do. There's going to be a Reddit post, 4 or 5 times a day on just, what Yogg-Saron did for me today. And I think it kind of takes that aspect within the game. I know it's a little bit of a bummer now that we've gone through a lot of these statistics that it does seem probably a little bit more underwhelming than we had anticipated early on, but at the same time, this aspect of it not being very good and not performing too frequently makes it so that one time when you play Yogg-Saron and you fireball your opponent in the face 6 times for perfect lethal from no board, nothing, and just ridiculous RNG, makes it just so much more special. So I think it's amazing that the card is part of the game. I don't think we'll see it in a competitive environment too frequently, but it'll be amazing if we do. That's going to be it for me today, guys. It's very interesting to see the community react and try to learn these cards as a whole. I think the community effort for Yogg-Saron has been above and beyond every other card ever announced or released in Hearthstone, and I await to see what crazy cards are going to come in Old Gods and the future of Hearthstone. I hope you guys enjoyed my review, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
The monster in your nightmares. The fiend of 1,000 faces.
Cower before my true form! Bow down before the god!